So today we're unpacking a pretty wild story. It's all about how one single blog post managed to send this massive, multi-billion-dollar shockwave through the stock market. And in the process, it spooked one of the biggest names in tech. Seriously, it's a fascinating story about old code, new AI, and a whole lot of money. $30 billion. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is the absolutely staggering amount of market value that the tech giant IBM lost in a single day. I mean, to put that into perspective, that's more than the entire GDP of some countries. Just gone in the time it takes you to watch a movie. So you hear a number like that and you think, okay, what could possibly cause a catastrophe on that scale? Had to be a disastrous earnings report, right? Or maybe a massive security breach, a huge corporate scandal? Nope. The trigger for one of IBM's worst days on the market in over a quarter of a century was something way, way stranger. And that's right, you heard me. All of that financial chaos was kicked off by an article on the internet about a programming language that was created when Eisenhower was president. It sounds completely unbelievable, but it's true. So yeah, let's dive into this. To really understand what happened here, we need to meet the main character of our story. And it's not a person, it's a language. COBOL. And it's probably one of the most important things in the modern world that you've never, ever heard of. So COBOL, it stands for Common Business-Oriented Language. It was designed way, way back in 1959 with really just one goal in mind: to be a super reliable, straightforward language for crunching huge amounts of business and financial data for big organizations. It wasn't built to be flashy or cool. It was built to be a workhorse, a tank. And here's the crazy part. COBOL was only ever meant to be a temporary solution, a quick fix. But then, something happened that changed its trajectory completely. The US Department of Defense saw how useful it was and basically mandated that computer manufacturers had to support it. And with that one move, COBOL went from being a temporary stopgap to an industry-defining standard. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, a 65-year-old language, that's got to be ancient history. But you would be so wrong. COBOL isn't some dusty relic in a museum. It is the invisible, silent giant that our entire global economy is built on. And this hits a lot closer to home than you think. The next time you tap your card to buy a coffee, there is an 80% chance that a COBOL program, running somewhere deep inside a mainframe computer, is the thing processing that transaction. Oh, and it doesn't stop there. Ever use an ATM? A mind-boggling 95% of all of those transactions are also handled by COBOL. It is literally the language of money, just quietly and reliably moving trillions of dollars around the planet every single day. Just take a second and try to wrap your head around that number. $3 trillion in commerce. Every single day. From banking and insurance to retail and logistics, COBOL applications are the engine that keeps the whole thing moving. It's a hidden but absolutely critical piece of our global infrastructure. All told, you're looking at something like 250 billion lines of this code still running systems in finance, government, manufacturing, you name it. It's this vast, sprawling digital foundation that was built decades ago, and we are all still living on top of it. So we have this unbelievably important system that the entire world depends on, but there's a problem, a really big problem. That foundation is starting to show some pretty serious cracks. Here's the deal. The people who actually built and understand these systems are retiring, and there just aren't enough new developers being trained to replace them. Plus, these older systems are notoriously difficult to connect to modern cloud technology, and, they can struggle to meet today's tough security standards. It's a ticking time bomb. For decades, fixing this problem has been a massive, incredibly expensive headache. But then, an AI company called Anthropic published that blog post. And in that post, they suggested that a new wave of technology was about to come along and change absolutely everything. This quote from their post really captures the old way of doing things perfectly. If a bank, say, wanted to update their COBOL system, they had to hire these huge, expensive teams of consultants who would literally spend years manually untangling all the old code. It was a slow, painful, and very, very profitable business for the companies that provided those services. What Anthropic claimed was that its AI, called Claude, could automate the hardest parts of this entire process. It could analyze the code, map it all out, and find the risks automatically. All of a sudden, a project that used to take years could potentially be done in just a few quarters. Those armies of consultants could be replaced by a piece of intelligent software. And that single idea, that right there, is what lit the fuse. So now let's connect all this back to that crazy $30 billion drop. Here's the key. Investors panicked, not because COBOL was suddenly a bad thing, but because the hugely profitable business of servicing all that old COBOL code was now under threat. Companies like IBM make a ton of money helping their clients maintain all this legacy code. If AI could suddenly do that work way faster and way cheaper, that entire revenue stream could just evaporate. Of course, IBM had a response to all this. They basically argued that their value isn't just in the code, it's in the hardware that the code runs on, the mainframe itself. They positioned their systems as these purpose-built fortresses, designed for a level of security and reliability that they argue nothing else can match, no matter what programming language you're using. You know, this whole saga is just such a powerful reminder that some of the most critical parts of our world are built on technology that's getting pretty old. The COBOL story shows just how quickly AI can threaten to upend business models that have been around for decades. And it leaves us with this really fascinating question. What other invisible systems are out there, running in the background, just waiting for their own AI disruption?